You deleted something before you sent it. Maybe it was a message to someone you hurt, or someone who hurt you. Maybe it was something honest you typed out at midnight and then read back in the morning light and thought, no, too much. You closed the app. You told yourself it was the right call, or maybe it was smaller than that. You walked into a room and someone looked up, and something in that look made you want to be somewhere else. You stayed. You smiled. But part of you was already gone. You know what that feeling is. You have known it your whole life. You just do not have a word you are comfortable using for it. Shame. Most emotions you can talk about them. Grief, people bring you casseroles. Anger, people give you space. Fear, people tell you it will be okay. But shame is the one you carry alone, because the only way to get help with it is to let someone see the exact thing you are most afraid to show. Here is what almost no one tells you about that. The Bible, the book quoted at weddings and printed on coffee mugs and read at funerals, is full of it. Full of shame. Pages of it. Stories about people who hid, who carried weight that marked them in public, who became in their own eyes something less than they were supposed to be. And the reason those stories are in there is not to make you feel better. It is because someone understood that the only thing lonelier than shame is shame you think no one else has ever felt. Before we get to those stories, there is one thing you need to know. One thing that changes how all of it reads. We think of shame as something that lives inside you, private, invisible, unless you choose to show it. That is how the modern world understands it. An internal experience, a feeling you manage. The people who wrote the Hebrew scriptures understood it differently. In the ancient world, shame was not private. It was physical. You wore it. Others could see it on you, the way you can see a fever in someone's face. Scholars who study the original Hebrew text describe shame as existing on a continuum with death, not as a metaphor, as a medical reality. To be shamed was to be diminished in a way your body registered, your bones, your breath, your ability to stand upright in a room. Keep that in the back of your mind as we walk through what the book actually says. The first people who ever felt shame were not bad people. They were two people in a garden who had, until that moment, never once felt the distance between who they were and who they were supposed to be. The text says this plainly. They were naked, and they felt no shame. Not because they were naive, because there was nothing between them and themselves. No performance, no managed version. They were simply present, fully, and it was enough. Then they ate the fruit. And here is the detail that most people skip past. Before God says a single word, before any consequence is announced, before anything happens at all, their eyes were opened, as it says in Genesis 3:7, and they knew they were naked. The shame arrived before the punishment, before the explanation, before anything external changed at all. What changed was internal. They looked at themselves and for the first time saw what they looked like from the outside. That gap between who you are and who you appear to be, that is where shame lives. It had never existed before that moment. And once it existed, the first thing they did was reach for leaves. Fig leaves, thin, temporary, covering almost nothing. God comes walking in the garden, and they hide among the trees. And God asks the question he already knows the answer to. Where are you? And Adam says, in Genesis 3:10, I heard you, and I was afraid, because I was naked, so I hid. Afraid, naked, hiding. that is 4,000 years old. And it is also this morning. Now move 1,000 years forward. A man who has won every war he has ever fought. A man his country sings songs about. A man so trusted by God that later writers will call him a man after God's own heart. He is at the peak of everything. And then he does something he cannot undo. King David takes a woman who is not his. He arranges the death of her husband to cover it. The secret holds. He keeps ruling. He keeps being the man everyone believes him to be. But David writes Psalm 32 about what those months cost him. Not after the confession about the silence before it. My body wasted away, he writes, through my groaning all day long. The weight on him was physical. This is the ancient Hebrew understanding of shame written in one man's experience. It was not just a feeling, it was in his bones. Guilt wants to confess. Guilt is relieved by confession. Shame does the opposite. Shame goes quiet. Because speaking it means letting someone see the person who did that thing. David carried it for months. The silence made it heavier. When the prophet Nathan finally arrives and confronts him, David does not argue. He says immediately, "I have sinned against the Lord." 2 Samuel 12:13. The confession comes fast because the weight had been there a long time, looking for somewhere to land. What David did. He chose. What Tamar had done to her. She did not. Tamar is the daughter of King David. She lives inside the royal household, inside the structure that was supposed to be the safest place available to her. Her half-brother Amnon becomes obsessed with her. He fabricates an illness to get her alone, and when she is there, he rapes her. And then the text says this, without flinching, he hates her. The thing he claimed to feel for her turns in the same hour to hatred, and he throws her out. Before she goes, Tamar says something that stops the story cold. She says, "Sending me away is a greater wrong than what you just did to me." 2 Samuel 13:16. She is not talking about the violence. She is talking about what comes after it in that world. What has been done to her is now visible on her body, in public. She walks out of his house with ashes on her head and her robe torn. These are not private expressions of grief. They are signals. Everyone who sees her knows what those marks mean. She has been made into something diminished, something marked. Her brother Absalom takes her in. And the text records, in one word, the rest of her life as the Bible follows it. Desolate. Not healing, not restored. Desolate. The Bible writes it down and does not fix it. There is no scene where someone makes it right. There is no lesson at the end of her story. There is just the truth of what happened, recorded without looking away. You may know shame from this direction. Shame that was not yours to begin with, that was handed to you by someone who hurt you and left you holding what they did. That was placed on you by a family, a community, a version of yourself that others decided on before you had any say. Shame you have been carrying for years that was never actually yours. Tamar's story is in the Bible. That is not an accident. Now one more. This one is about the gap between who you believe you are and what you actually do when it costs something to stay. Peter had been with Jesus for 3 years. He was the one who said, when Jesus asked who people thought he was, "You are the Christ." He was the one who, at the Last Supper, said he would go to prison before he would deny him. He meant it. That same night, in the courtyard of the high priest's house. A servant girl looked at him across a fire and said, "You were with him." And Peter said no, 3 times. And then a rooster crowed. And Peter remembered what Jesus had said would happen. And the text says, he went outside and wept bitterly. Luke 22:62. He is not weeping because he broke a rule. He is weeping because in 1 hour, standing in the cold by a fire, he became someone he did not recognize. Shame lives in that space between the person you believed you were and the person you watched yourself be when it actually mattered. After the resurrection, Jesus finds him, and he does not address what happened, does not process it, does not deliver a speech. He asks Peter 3 questions, the same number as the denials. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? Each time Peter says yes, Jesus gives him something to do. Feed my sheep, tend my lambs. The shame is not argued away. It is not explained. It is covered by a direction, somewhere to be, something to become, a future laid over the worst moment. Here is the pattern across all 4 of them. Shame in the Bible is never resolved by explanation. It is never talked away, analyzed away, or prayed into disappearing. What happens instead is quieter and more specific than any of that. When Adam and Eve come out of hiding, God looks at their fig leaves, thin, temporary, covering almost nothing, and makes them garments of skin. Genesis 3:21. The word used in the original Hebrew for this covering shares its root with the word for atonement. Covering, not erasure, not forgetting, something placed over the thing that was exposed, something that holds. That is what happens to David, to Tamar, to Peter. Something is placed over the wound not to pretend it is not there, but because the wound alone is not the whole story. Shame tells you that what is true about you, if fully known, would be too much. The book says it has already been seen, all of it. And something is being made, has always been being made that is sufficient for what you are carrying. You do not need to figure out what to do with that right now. You just needed to know you are not the first.